I was told multiple times we have finished the work for the year. We finished the work for the year. So that is why we're.
And we can't do it anymore.
I think to get perspective, they were tapped out. Yes.
Yes, but there's other.
Great. Good morning, everyone. It is that time, so I will call the meeting to order. Indicate that the meeting has been properly noticed by the clerk's office. We will begin with a moment of silent prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In terms of attendance, looking around, I did receive an email from Kenny Cannon from the Department of Corrections. He had a personal issue arise this morning and would not be able to attend. Additionally, some of you may be aware that our public defender's office, leadership for our public defender's office is in flux. I was told that they have recently made a decision in that regard, and so I'm expecting the new local leadership to onboard in all aspects, including the CJCC role, I hope by the next meeting. So I'm still facilitating that process, but I believe they've made some decisions in that regard, and we're expecting the new local manager to begin fulfilling that role by the time we have our next meeting. So we'll note those two absences, otherwise everyone else in attendance. Then we have minutes from April 14th, looking for any corrections to the minutes as posted. Looks like we got the attendance correct from last time. So with none, those minutes will stand as posted. Then turning to our first item on the possible action or discussion section of our agenda is our strategic plan as prepared by JMI. So just to backtrack, you'll recall that there was an opportunity for discussion at our last meeting and then a window of time to review the draft from JMI that was sent to all members by email. That window of time was an opportunity for feedback directly to JMI by all members. So any requested or proposed revisions, substantive or scrivener errors, things of that nature. And then JMI ultimately compiled the final report, which is what is before you. So this would be our opportunity to review for any final changes in the event we wish to make any changes. Otherwise, it is before you for your consideration and approval as our strategic plan.
Motion to accept our strategic plan.
Any second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion regarding 26-27 strategic plan? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, congratulations, we have our strategic plan. Appreciate all the hard work that went into that. Ultimately, I think this is a great guide for us moving forward, targeting our specific priorities. Then if you look at the agenda, we wisely made a balance of section 3B, outlining some potential action items that could be taken, assuming or at least contingent upon planning that or passing the strategic plan. And in consultation with our coordinator, Attorney Stern, we suspected we would have the opportunity this morning what's before us this morning. And so in looking at that first item, focusing on the priority of strengthening the CJCC, we're returning to the discussion of the governance model, returning to that discussion of a chair, vice chair model or co-chair models. And for your consideration, as part of that discussion, you have a couple of different materials in your packet supplied by JMI, a structure decision guide. It looks like an infographic, a comparison at a glance, multi-page document from JMI as well, all meant to help foster a discussion as well as provide information to the group to facilitate the discussion and potentially result in a decision this morning. So with that, I'll open it up for questions, discussion. To lay a little bit more foundation, this is one of our goals in our priority area of strengthening the CJCC. We identified the goal as determined consensus for CJCC leadership and governance structure. Tactic number 1, present a comparative overview of 2 governance structure models, chair, vice chair, or co-chair models. So that's really what you have in front of you is this overview. Step 2 is to hold the vote on the governance structure to define those leadership roles. So that's really where we're at right now, is taking a look at the comparative overview and then potentially moving into a vote if the group is of that mindset this morning.
Well, I'll open it up. You know, everyone's so quiet so early in the morning, so just getting your feedback a little bit as the current chair and what your thoughts are with the current model versus the co-chair, because I'm very interested in the co-chair, but I don't want to step on your toes and have that discussion. So
Sure.
looking to see
Some feedback. Sure. Here's what I can offer from my perspective thus far. I think there's benefits to both models. The co-chair models offer a different optics, especially from the exterior for individuals that look at the CJCC and want a better understanding as to how it operates and the governance structure. And so the co-chair models better represent the idea of interdisciplinary governance of the group and shared leadership. And so that is a better mirror for those principles than perhaps a chair, vice chair might be. Certainly can understand that. 2, it would be more challenging, I think, to have a true co-chair model in actual practice with our current structure, which is to say that we all have jobs on top of the positions that we currently hold, and we are all taking on our role in our CJCC in addition to everything else that we are currently doing. I'm not aware of anyone that either got a pay raise or was able to take something off their plate in order to take on the role of serving on the CJCC, which I greatly appreciate and give everyone credit for. But there are limits to what each individual member can bring to the CJCC at this time, and we're all figuring that out a little bit. And so, if we want to move to a true co-chair model, we need to have true co-chairs, which are 2 individuals that can fully serve in that co-chair role and partner in that way. I would appreciate that and would benefit from it in that I'm often reaching out to any other member who may be able to contribute to the conversation on any particular issue that we're dealing with. But at this point, there are limits to, I think, what everyone can bring. And that's where we're at. So we are doing the best with what we have right now. That would be my comment on it. In terms of operationally, how it would change, I'm not sure it would change things a ton in the short term. Right now, there's a transition from the support we've been receiving from JMI, which has been providing a lot of backbone support and education and guidance on early CJCC development, to, in large part, Brad as coordinator and myself and my vice chair in providing oversight and input, identifying the next goal on the priority in the priority and driving the action forward and bringing it to the group, making sure that we're being accountable for the action that was supposed to happen between one meeting and the next, and following through, establishing the work groups, checking in with the work groups, ensuring that their work is being done. It's a lot of lifting in that regard, and it's transitioning from JMI to, in large part, your coordinator, and then the either co-chairs or the chair, and in the chair's absence, the vice chair. That's really the transition point that we're in.
And to that point, Judge Gearnoff was very kind in including me as part of the active group of people getting things done, but in reality, it's been all Judge Gearnoff and County Attorney Stern. I've had very limited input. And in my opinion, just because of proximity and things, at least the way I work, it would make sense if there were two co-chairs, that both of those would be on the same campus, or able to stop by for a meeting at a somewhat short notice. I don't feel like I've been able to give the support that the chair needs, just with my schedule and locale, right? It's not that I'm not willing, it's just very difficult.
I'll say that I come with a professional bias and reliance on the chain of command, so I like having a structured piece. I also know just organizationally. Work products that we're involved in, if there isn't someone taking the helm, it tends to flounder. I see review of the material, the co-chair versus chair, vice chair piece seemed to be like if you felt there was conflict or there was a need of a check and balance system, that the co-chair structure would be valued. And I don't feel that on the CJCC, but perhaps I'm again biased by my reliance on a chain of command. A co-chair seems like a dilution of leadership. What's the word, right? Dilute? Yeah. The act of diluting. Thank you. It seems like a dilution of leadership. I understand the value if we were in conflict. I also know that our information put a lot of weight on, if you go to a co-chair, that they should be very much the opposite sides of the spectrum of your sphere, right? So, Julie, do you need more work?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I thought Julie would be excellent because we do have a lot of, and she's gonna really give me the beans later on. But I mean, with what the priorities we have, it does focus a lot on behavioral health and things of that nature. But I think also too, to Chief Deering's point, you know, we're geared towards that type of chain of command. Whereas this thing moves forward and develops and grows in its functionality, like you have been tasked with a tremendous amount. The first year and a half we've been doing this, County Attorney Stern has been tasked with a tremendous amount of work. So I think having a co-chair, and I'm chain of command too, right? But having a co-chair, it's not like the chief of this or the sheriff of that. It's we're all working together as a team. Not that law enforcement or fire doesn't work as a team, but it's we're all the decision-making properties. So I prefer the co-chair method, even though I am chain of command, just to lessen the load, if you will, and bounce things off each other. Not that that doesn't happen with vice chair and chair, but that's my thought process. And I thought of Julie, but I'm going to pay the piper later for that.
I apologize, but can someone remind me the current structure, the chair and the vice chair? Are we doing term limits? Or
We don't, they're not included in the bylaws. So
there's no period of time where we say like, unless, you know, the chair, the vice chair, the vice chair would want to say like, I just don't want to do this anymore, then we would make a transition.
Yeah, correct. So the chair is currently the Washington County Circuit Court judge. The vice chair is voted on by the members and shall serve until he or she resigns from the position. That's how it's written in the bylaws. I can say that from a strategy and discussion point, it has been particularly valuable to partner with a person serving as a supervisor on the county board. So talking through some strategic issues, some discussion points, needing funding for certain things, having that continuity of high level discussion, but also having you know, your presence on the CJCC, knowing that you have been copied in on all, sadly, on all of the emails and received all the documents and been aware of all the work from with JMI, has really built a strong foundation when we've needed to ask for resources, not only from the board, but also from other county entities to support the CJCC when it's, I think, a little unclear at this point what the CJCC is doing on behalf of the county in general. So when we circle back to the original conversation about that original vice chair role, I remember there being a comment, and it might have been from the county executive, about wanting that buy-in from the county board and from other county entities as a whole. I think there was success, or at least there has been success in that thus far.
I agree with that 100%. That seems like a very good model right now, especially in the groups that can see us. We need strong direction. If there's two people leading, and there's one's doing most of the work and trying to convince the other one, or find, not necessarily that anyone lazy or anything like that, but vision sometimes takes direct decision making. You're doing an excellent job with it, Your Honor. I think having that as a vice chair, so helping you with your reports to the county board, having that buy-in, rightfully identified. I feel like we're on a good model now. Be interested in Dave, what the co-chair model brings.
Shared responsibility, like everything right now is on the judge. And quite frankly, the county attorney. And not to say that you can't do it, because you've been doing great, as the chief says, but that's just how we see it in that co-chair model with the shared responsibility, being able to, not that you don't do it currently, but that buy-in, as the executive said at the onset, from the county perspective, along with the judicial side of the sphere. It's legislative, judicial, and I just prefer that. That's just me. You know, I can be entirely off base.
Is there a scenario where if we can continue down the road in the same structure in the future, the group wanted to revisit it, but could amend the bylaws then?
Sure, you can amend the bylaws at any point. The bylaws include provision on amendments, 2/3 vote of the membership, and there's no time limit or no frequency limit, may be amended at any meeting of the CJCC by a 2/3 vote. And reminder that your coordinator sends out the email usually about a week before the meeting calling for agenda items. So nothing prevents any member from offering any agenda item for discussion on any topic. That would be your means and pipeline to generate that conversation. I don't have a horse in this race, to be honest with you. I am not offended by this discussion personally or professionally. In large part, I don't think it would have changed how I operated and what I've brought to the table thus far. I look at the table, I can work with each and every one of you. I am convinced of that. If there is someone who would be willing and interested and super excited to serve as a co-chair and partner on this, there's room at the head. There's room here to do. There's plenty of work to do. And that would be beneficial to the CJCC, I am sure. If I may, I am expecting later on in the agenda to make a proposal that Julie serve as the committee chair for the behavioral health subcommittee. So I want to, in at least fairness to Julie, mention that I think that is a discussion that will be happening later in the agenda when we focus on the behavioral health work group. I'm not sure how that factors into her workload or her thoughts, but I've worked with Julie many times. I'm convinced I have no concerns about doing it again. Happy to work with any of you as well. Happy to continue work with Supervisor Schwab. I do think we need to come to some consensus on this and move forward from it, though, so we can continue to focus on the rest of our priorities and our work as well, and at least feel comfortable enough to continue to move on. I'm not sure if this is an optics issue, and it would be helpful to restructure it so that there's a better visual of how the group is led, or if more reporting out would be helpful. I'm not sure whether either of those would be of benefit to this conversation on an ongoing basis either. Supervisor Schwab?
Thank you. Dave, you had mentioned you were kind of in favor of a co-chair system. Help me understand, if you would, what that vision is. You had mentioned Julie. I don't know who you were thinking of for the other person with regard for the JMI's suggestion that it's kind of like positive, negative, yin yang, different. Can you kind of flesh out what you're thinking the whole structure would look like in that scenario?
That's a difficult thing to wrap the whole thing in a package and provide that to you right now, but it's just more for me, like, it's a shared responsibility. Everything's not just on the judge. Manufacturing agenda items. I know the county attorney sends out the email. If there's anything on the agenda that you want to put on there, great, and he creates the agenda and everything. Just, the opportunity to have that shared responsibility. JMI does a nice job with differentiating the definitions of chair, vice chair versus the co-chair model. And it just, I think it would be beneficial for your mindset, thinking of you and how much you put forth in this regard. And I know you get all the emails and we've discussed this at length. But I just would like to hear the feedback you gave to us. Like, what's your choice? What would you prefer?
If I can jump in. I think you're absolutely right that to try and split the load of leadership in an ideal world, the co-chair system really makes sense. But in a real world, it's almost one of those things where if there isn't one person in charge, then you have to spend so much time in discussion, so much time in collaboration, so much time trying to figure out every topic and what are we going to do there and discuss everything. I think Judge has been very
absolutely
on point with everything and has demonstrated good leadership. And so I like the idea of co-chair as well, but I'm pretty sure I don't want to be the person having all those discussions, right? Optically, I think the co-chair thing looks better because, yep, we get law enforcement side or public defender side or mental health side, or there's more opportunities to have what looks like a fair system, right? Not that anybody at the table wouldn't be fair, but it is strictly at that point a matter of optics. And so I'm torn as well, and that's why I asked you if you could kind of flesh that out a little bit more and help me understand your thought process. In some ways, co-chairs could be very good, but they'd have to be so well meshed and talking so frequently, I think, to achieve the same thing that one person as a chair can do, that it's, while the intent is there to be positive and lighten the load, I think it almost increases the load.
So I think, I think one of the reasons people try to struggle with this, like co-chair versus, the current structure, is to try to set up the group, in the best way possible for what could be, what might happen, all the what ifs type of thing. And we're still a forming group. I think we've made some good progress over the last year on our relationship building and our coming together with understanding what our purpose is. But I think, one of the things we're trying to solve for is what if, and I'm not saying that this is happening now, because I'm very satisfied with where things have been going, but what if in the future the group is dissatisfied with the way that the leader is driving the group? And then, right, that's when you have breakdown in a structure and in a group, because then you start having side conversations and side quests and all sorts of things. And so how does the group resolve any future issues if we were dissatisfied with the way that the group, the CJCC was going, the road that it was going down?
Well, I think in the bylaws, it's pretty obvious. We add it as an agenda item, we talk about it, and if we need to change something, we can pretty much change that at any time. So it's, in theory, it's not that difficult, but in practicality, as nice as most people are, that's where the problem is. If someone actually feels something isn't going well, they gotta have the gumption to point it out and make a ruckus, so to speak.
My perspective is very similar to the chief, but for a little different reason. So yeah, we're both from paramilitary organizations and every one of us in our own perspective, we are the leaders of our area. We're not an advisory to the people that report to us. This group here is a little different because we truly aren't, we're not a governing body. We're an advisory group really. So I mean, like the county board has that structure where the first vice chair, because they have authority to make decisions. So from my perspective, having the single chair model to begin with, we're still new. But I think that's a good way to start. And if we kind of, to Julie's point, I think if we wanted to later on to get that more diverse perspective with a co-chair, I think that would be fine. But I'm actually pretty satisfied with the direction we're going right now.
The subcommittees that we're gonna talk about, that's a shared governance model too. It strikes me that one of my other weaknesses is the fact that I'm usually naive about things beyond my sphere. So is there another dynamic that I'm missing that the co-chair model brings to the funding or county board governance or grant applications? And is there something that I'm not up on? Like the sheriff's point, I feel like the inertia is in the right direction right now, and it still needs good leadership. Maybe as we become more self-governance and all those things, that the coaching model makes more sense. It's a great point about how to change that model. Is there something that I understand what would be a benefit for you? What's the dynamic that I'm missing?
I'm not aware of any.
You need a motion.
Only if we want to take action to make a change to current structure. In the absence of that, we would move on from this agenda item towards behavioral health.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. This isn't a decision that can never be revisited. So, and I would prefer not to revisit it next meeting. That would be a lack of productivity. But we are a young CJCC. Over time, well-run CJCCs run in the absence of their leaders. And you will see that happen across well-run meetings where they run in the absence of the leadership because the meeting, those in attendance understand what the substance and the function of the meeting is. And so at some point, revisiting that co-chair model may be a better fit for where the group is at. A discussion to have perhaps at some point in the future again. Okay, turning to the next agenda item, that is the second priority that we have, which is behavioral health. Julie Driscoll has agreed to provide an update on the behavioral health work group structure. Thank you, Julie, for behind the scenes informally taking ownership of that topic and then perhaps more formally agreeing to do so momentarily. But would you provide some update as to that work group?
Yeah, so I mean, right now we're just trying to get the meetings on the calendar. As you can imagine, it's very challenging, especially during the summertime. So we have several meetings scheduled to address the first couple of action items that the work group outlined in the strategic plan. Reviewing, other groups that are in the community to make sure we're not duplicating and we're not, going to meetings, just go to meeting, and then to create our charter. Secondarily, however, we have begun the planning for the SIM mapping. And so that is scheduled. And we are getting ready to get that out to, it's an invite only event, but you will all be invited. And it is, the 3rd and 4th of September. It's a full day on the 3rd of September and a half a day on the 4th. And likely have it at Marine Park. We're negotiating that, conference space right now. And so that will be, hopefully, I will keep that up, to get the sign up for that. And if, you know, we're putting together, the judge and the county attorney and I are putting together, you know, who we think we should invite. Certainly, you know, we could share that list with the CJCC if folks wanted to provide some input, or if you had people, you know, sort of in your organization you thought really needed to be part of that. We're anticipating about 30 to 40 people to be in attendance at that.
Thank you. So if we could take those in turn. Julie, the work group that you've put together, could you share the names of the individuals that you've assembled thus far?
Yeah, currently we've invited the jail administrator, Chief of Police of West Bend, the division manager from behavioral health, who is Doug Fry, crisis supervisor John France, the outpatient mental health supervisor Christy Wozniak-Serby from behavioral health. We've invited somebody from Elevate. Trying to think. I believe Ken Cannon on that invite as well. And so I think part of that group, however, part of the work we'll do in the first several meetings is also to look at who else needs to be as part of that work group. I think developing our charter will help to drive some of that as well. But these initial folks were the folks who worked with our consultant on developing the strategic priority in behavioral health. And so we just asked them to come back to the table to continue that conversation. So I anticipate that the group may, you know, shift a little bit over the next several months, especially depending on what our charter is and what our outcomes that we hope to achieve.
So I wanted to bring the group back to our bylaws, which allow us to create subcommittees and ad hoc committees. One of our thought processes regarding behavioral health was to create such a subcommittee to accomplish the objectives of our strategic plan. Would there be interest in entertaining a motion to support the work group that Julie's identified by formalizing it with a subcommittee?
So
A second?
Second.
The bylaws are silent on this. Brad, do we have to specifically identify the members of the subcommittee, or can we allow the CJCC members to identify the membership of the subcommittee?
I think you can go there.
Okay, that way we could allow that membership to be in flux and as determined by the CJCC members. Does that seem acceptable? Our bylaws also require 2 CJCC members on the subcommittee. We have that by way of the chief and Julie, so we've met our requirement there. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And then, Julie, you have also, by way of an email that I sent to you, indicated a willingness to serve as a chair of that committee, a subcommittee then, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Then I will make a motion for Julie to serve as a chair of that subcommittee.
Second.
Any further discussion? That should be the discussion point. Thank you, Julie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much, Julie.
I think that's.
Is it really?
I think so.
Just excuse me one second.
That's the new manager for SPD.
Thank you. I'll take a moment to introduce the new lead attorney from the Public Defender's Office who's joined us. We spoke about this earlier this morning. Actually, we were wondering when we have the opportunity to have you join us. Thank you, Attorney Bratz, for alerting us. Would you introduce yourself to the group and then we'll do introductions as well?
Thank you. Yes, my name is Carly Patsky Reyes. I am the new attorney manager for West Bend in Ozaki County. I apologize. I came to the door. I didn't know how to get in. So Carrie was nice enough to bring me down. So very nice to meet you all. I apologize.
Yes, it wasn't a hazing that the building is under construction when you had to come to your first CJCC meeting. But certainly appreciate you making time this morning. County Executive, would you begin the introductions?
I'm County Executive Joshua. Well, nice to meet you. Training Diversion Training Court Manager.
Marty Schultes, the sheriff, welcome.
Mike Schwab, I represent the county board.
Sandy Giernoth, Circuit Court Judge, Branch 4.
Barry Brass, District Attorney. Good to see you again.
Dave Sager, Chief Public Safety Officer. Welcome.
I'm Julie Driscoll, I'm the Chief Health and Human Services Officer.
I'm Tim Deering. I'm the Chief of West Bend.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Right,
Well, thank you.
Well, welcome. You sat down just in time for potential nominations for subcommittees, so.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we had accomplished Julie serving as chair with regards to behavioral health. And then that passed, correct? Okay, all right. So then Julie also had given us an update regarding the SIM mapping exercise. This is also part of our priorities on behavioral health. So credit to Julie on driving those issues forward. Significant progress on the priority area of behavioral health. Thank you, Julie, for taking ownership of that and driving it. If you can make time in your agenda for that SIM mapping, we would really appreciate it. That's going to be significant to identifying areas of opportunity, which will help drive that conversation. If you recall, Department of Justice is facilitating that SIM mapping. They're also funding it for us, which is fantastic. One of the conversation points shared with us is that your outcome, your result of this exercise is only as good as the people in the room. So diversity of attendance from different stakeholders contributing to this area of behavioral health is really important to a productive exercise and a productive outcome. So when you take a look at the identified stakeholder groups, if you have something, if you're aware of somebody who would fit that role, please share it. It's very comprehensive. So we do want to make sure that we represent as many as possible.
And if I could just add, I think the outcome of this day and a half, then, the action items that are identified then will be taken to the output group to try to make happen or come up with suggestions or, further that work. So I think it'll be, a day and a half well spent for us.
And to clarify, it was all day the 3rd and half day the 4th. Thank you.
We'll provide lunch on the Thursday. Very exciting.
Anything else then, Julie, on behalf of the behavioral health priority?
No.
All right, then turning to pretrial compliance. This work group has not yet formed. I know Attorney Stern, as your coordinator, had made some effort to reach out to the prior work group that participated in the strategic planning effort. I did have a chance to speak to Attorney Bratz in the hall this morning, asked him whether he had bandwidth to potentially lead that work group or subcommittee if the group decides to go in that direction. Attorney Bratz?
I have the capacity, so I'm more than willing.
So that might be a direction that the group could go if you're interested. If you so choose, then the chair could go back to that work group, follow Julie's structure in terms of trying to circle back to the work group that worked with JMI to put together the strategic plan, and then make efforts to get working on the goals and the tactics that we've outlined. That would be our first step. In fairness to him, I did just ask him this morning in the hall if he was able to take that on. So to his credit, he said yes, but he didn't have much time to think about it. So.
Well, then I'll make a motion.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? And a thank you as well. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You don't get to answer. All right, it passes. Thank you so much. Appreciate you chairing that subcommittee. Then we have our pretrial compliance subcommittee formed that does need a second member of the CJCC on it. So if you are unable to get a volunteer, let us know, but I suspect in the work group as it forms, you'll have another individual serving on it.
I would be interested in that
Perfect.
unless we're limited to just two, but I'd be
Our
interested.
bylaws require two. We are not limited by two, but that'll take care of that as well then. Thank you.
Yeah, all the meetings.
Julie, you wanted to share with the group a National Pretrial Compliance Association Conference announcement?
Yeah, so when in our DOJ grant this year, we sort of outlined some funding in anticipation of some of the work that we hope to be achieved through the CJCC on pretrial compliance. You know, obviously not knowing how long it would take us to get to the point that we are. And where we'll be in the fall. So there is some money allocated for someone to attend the National Pretrial Compliance Association Conference. I believe it's in Reno, Nevada. If somebody was interested, it just does happen to be several days before the SIMS training. So anybody who would be going would be really committing to some CJCC work that week. I sort of flippantly said, well, I'll go, but I am 100% the least appropriate person to go. Because I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know anything about pretrial compliance. But Andy and I had earmarked this money and wanted to put out to the group, and maybe this is for you, Attorney Bratz, you know, somebody that was going to be on the pretrial compliance work group that we could send to learn some more things about this work and how other folks across the country are implementing, you know, programs.
Do you know when you looked at the materials for the conference, who is typical to attend either on behalf of the CJCC or even on behalf of a county?
I did not look at that level of detail. I mean, it tends to be, you know, folks in the criminal justice system, lawyers and that sort of thing, coordinators, and definitely not health and human services managers. Probably not. So, I mean, I can get that information. And certainly, I mean, nobody has to make that decision today, but I wanted to put that on your radar because, like I said, we do have the funding. And I think it'd be a good opportunity to, you know, to help further our understanding and learning if we could send someone.
Attorney Bratz, would you add that to your radar?
Yes.
As that work group, or sorry, the subcommittee is formed? Obviously a very quick turnaround for that, but in the event that it lines up and there is a person in your work or in your subcommittee that's interested, it could be a great foundation for the group to get a lot of information as the subcommittee starts their work.
Yes, I'll make note of that and figure that out as well and see if we can find somebody.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or discussion on the pretrial compliance work group at this point? All right, next item on the agenda is the topic of review of the meeting frequency poll. There was a poll, anonymous poll that was sent out at my request. I was made aware of some discussion amongst CJCC members about whether it might be beneficial to meet more frequently to put more energy behind our strategic plan. And also heard some opposite perspectives, which is we can't rush this. We need to stay on our current meeting schedule to allow for the appropriate amount of time between meetings in order to make sure that we have meetings of substance and that we have the time necessary in between meetings to do the work that's needed. So time to take some informal polling and see where things land. Attorney Stern, could you share where the poll came out?
Last I heard it was 6-3 in favor of monthly meetings.
Okay. So I'm sharing the information with you just for purposes of sharing the discussion or the results of the poll for purposes of discussion. It is obviously up to you whether to take action on it. would encourage anyone here who has a perspective on it to share it, so we discuss counter and exchange counterpoints on it. I'm not sure who was in what. This was an anonymous poll. I only generated the poll because I was told that there were some differing perspectives, and I thought it was valuable to have the discussion and see where the group wanted to go.
I make a motion for us to run a monthly meetings, through the end of this calendar year. And then reassess that at that time.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
I just want to put out there, I feel very stressed about that. Just because especially if the bulk of the work is going to happen in the work groups. I don't know, I'm worried that we won't have enough to report on every single month. And so then I guess I just would want to know, like, what are we going to talk about?
If I may, looking at the timeline, there seem to be a lot of tasks or objectives that the CJCC itself is necessary to complete before the work groups begin to take significant action. In particular, things like a data sharing agreement, decision regarding website content, like who's gonna, where any data is going to be stored. It's best practice if we're talking about data and like how we're going to share and manage that, not that each individual department or agency collect and then individually report its own data, because then it's pre-filtered and everything. It's best that the CJCC identify the where and how it's going to store that data, and then everyone reports kind of raw data for KPIs to be developed. That would be one good example of why that should be completed beforehand, before individual work groups identify their individual KPIs and measures and how they're going to report it in the long term. But I think if the CJC, it seems realistic based on the strategic plan and the objectives that the CJCC as a whole would have enough work and individual tasks to complete between now and the end of the year to meet monthly and still be productive without solely relying on report outs from work groups, in my opinion.
I was one that was for keeping the structure the same, only because I know we're all very busy, but I counted up, I have 12 monthly meetings that I attend right now, and it's very, very important. But I think there's some work that could be done in the subcommittees, which would be another meeting. So I just don't want to get to the point where we're a committee that keeps track of minutes and loses hours. And that's my fear if we have monthly meetings.
And if we have that, we should end it abruptly. I'm afraid of losing momentum, and I agree with everything he said. When you look at that Gantt chart, I don't think work content is going to be our problem. If we drag this thing out until July of 2027, we're gonna have a whole different problem.
Strikes me we're pushing workload to subcommittees. So if you're on an aggressive subcommittee and we're adding workload to the CJCC as a whole, it'd be a workload distribution issue. So perhaps if it's our model and we have our three areas, perhaps it would be smart to consider a governance subcommittee to work through some of those issues you're bringing, to bring recommendations back, so we're not coming to, so basically you're having your organizational meeting every other month, and on the off months our work groups are working to get the nuts and bolts, so we're not doubling down on certain members. Something to think about.
There are models of CJCCs that have, they don't call it a governance committee. The name is escaping me, but it's like an executive committee, where on the off months they meet to discuss where are things at, accountability as to what's progress on these particular priorities, where the subcommittees at, and the like. Admittedly, there are CJCCs that are probably much larger than where we're currently at, rather than half of who's sitting at the current table, right? But that is a strategy that's used in between the meetings for accountability that potentially could be a fit going forward. I share both Julie and Andy's concerns, which is to say that the work groups, the subcommittees rather need time to get underway and get their structure set up and get their work going. And at the same time, there is work for the CJCC itself to be doing that is necessary for the work groups, I keep saying work groups, for the subcommittees to be productive and get their work done. And then I also have the concerns that the sheriff has, which is, I didn't know if anybody else checked all their other meetings that they go to on a monthly, weekly basis, but maybe they're close to the dozen that he attends. Maybe they're more. You are all people of very limited time. So I respect that as well. We could simply take the vote and see where things land. We have the motion on the table unless there's more discussion.
I agree with everything you said, Jeff, but this is like a startup business and you can't do it slow. Like you either get off the ground, you fly, or you crash fast. And that's what I'm worried about. I communicated that last month, that's why I haven't said much this month. Like, I don't feel like I need to keep beating a dead horse. Like, we want to go some other model, do it. Vote no, and we'll go have a subcommittee or something, but that's my concern. I'm probably gonna keep echoing it until July of 2027. Like, it's not gonna, I just try not to keep beating the dead horse.
I mean, I like the idea of the executive, but then, right, then, I mean, we're such a small group that then it's like, well, half the people are then meeting every month anyway, and then you probably are like, well, I kind of wanted to be there if you weren't part of that executive meeting, so, you know, maybe that's a but so then, I mean, I feel like if we have it time limited, that we'll revisit it, that's not gonna be from now until the end of the time that we continue monthly. It'd be worth trying. As long as it's not on our responsibility to bring the work product.
I mean, that is the motion. It's through the end of 2026. So we would revert back to our original structure as of 2027, absent the group taking action at that point. So it's time bound.
I think, in the interest of gaining momentum, that we probably should need to meet more frequently for a while. And Julie, for your concern about, well, what if, you know, then we almost have to make work to fill our agenda in those months. I don't know that that's necessarily true. We can have a short agenda, but there are typically things that we can talk about and work through and hone in on to keep things moving forward. But if we lose the opportunity for that meeting, then we lose the opportunity to move forward. I think that would be a mistake.
Any further discussion? All in favor, indicate by raising your hand on this occasion in case there's opposition. Any opposed? All
I
right.
just want in a minute so it doesn't seem like we're all groupthink. Unanimous on everything.
Any abstentions? All right, it passes. Then we will adjust. That will be effective as of this meeting. We will adjust effective for next month. We'll talk about that as item 4 in the agenda. Thank you. I appreciate the discussion. Also heard from the group the need not to lean on the work groups, wanting to focus on the work that the CJCC itself needs to do in order to allow the subcommittees to be productive. And so I'm sure our coordinator was hearing that conversation as well. So message received. Item 3D, review and approval of 2027 TAD grant application to fund drug court and diversion program. Andy?
Yeah, thank you. As part of the TAD grant application requirements, we are to review our plan for the application with our oversight committee or county CJCC. So before you is our very rough overview or high-level overview of our plan for the 2027 TAD grant application, which will provide funding from January 1st, 27 all the way through 2031. We have to reapply each year, but it's a 5-year cycle. At the bottom, it lays out our current plan, at least for 27, of how the total grant amount is going to be distributed between our two drug diversion program and drug treatment court. And as noted, the Federal Bureau of Justice Assistance Grant for Drug Treatment Court, that funding will end at the end of next year, at which time we'll be able to reconsider how we're balancing that funding to meet the needs of both programs, which we'll do with the committee members that are directly involved and all stakeholders directly in those programs, and we'll also provide an update to the CJCC. And so we would like to ask if there's certainly any questions. I recently gave a presentation on those programs. Otherwise, if there's not a need for discussion, certainly like to ask for the CJCC's approval of our plan to apply for the grant as outlined.
I would move that the CJCC approve the application, but I do have a question as well.
I'll second it to get to the question.
As I'm looking at the budget, it seems like approximately 75% of the grant is going to be used for consultants. Help me understand what, I mean, it's kind of a broad,
Yes.
some people might say that's a slush fund, you know?
Right, thank you. And so it's the way DOJ organizes their funding categories, because Washington County Health and Human Services contracts with Elevate to provide all alcohol and drug testing and case management services. That all falls under consultants.
Okay.
And because Elevate is providing all case management and alcohol and drug testing, which is the majority of the cost for the programs, that's why that significant chunk falls under consultants. But it goes toward really the majority of the operational expenses, supplies, and then staffing that covers the direct client work.
Thank you.
Just as an illustration, the largest expense for both programs is drug testing, correct?
Second to staff, yeah.
Right, and then the largest, yes, correct. So the largest human cost would be the cost of staffing, which is the case management, which provides the community supervision for the diversion program for the drug court in combination with Department of Corrections that provides the community supervision. So it is not a slush fund for sure.
Yes.
Historically, this action has been taken by the DTCCC, Drug Treatment Court Coordinating Committee, because we previously did not have a CJCC. Department of Justice requires an oversight body to take action on and approve the application for the grant funding. Historically, we did that by way of that other committee in the absence of a CJCC. So if you're asking why is this in front of me, the answer is because the DOJ requires it. When we didn't have it, we got around it a different way. Now that we have the CJCC, it's in front of you for the first time for your consideration to align with Department of Justice expectations for grant applications.
And if I could just add, Supervisor Schwab, I think we talked about this maybe a couple of meetings ago, but then this will also come forward to the Health and Human Services Committee and then the County Board for approval to apply and then receive the grant when we're awarded it. Many approval processes.
And previously, we did also run it through the existing DTCCC, which had been our consistent practice previously. So that group has already taken a look at it, had a conversation about it, and from their perspective, approved it, knowing it was going to be sent to the CJCC for your consideration. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Appreciate that. Next meeting date, then we need to adjust the calendar. I'm pulling out the calendar looking for July. Second Tuesday in July is the 14th. Everyone double check and make sure that I'm reading that accurately, but I believe that's correct. July 14th at 7:30 for our next meeting then, based upon our last motion.
Yes.
All right, with that, I believe we have concluded our agenda. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mike, I'm not gonna boycott our second, next meeting, that's unfortunate. I won't be.
Nope.